is a talk that I'm about to give in Brooklyn for the Neshei Cares organization. The topic is time management, and it is being given in the Yemei HaSfira.
I'd like to introduce our next speaker, who really needs no introduction. He's a noted lecturer and author, Rabbi Paysach Krohn.
I'm deeply grateful to Mrs. Leshkowitz and to Mrs. Berkowitz for having invited me once again to come to speak to all of you at Neshei Cares. Over the last number of years, I've had the great zchus to be able to speak for this wonderful organization. And for many, many, many wonderful years, I had the zchus to speak with that extraordinary woman, Rebbetzin Zahava Bronstein, who we all revered and admired. Last year at Neshei Cares, it was only a few weeks after she passed away. She passed away Chafei Adar. And I felt that it was appropriate to say a few words of hesped for her. And I was wondering, what about this year? Is it appropriate to talk about her? And then it occurred to me, our topic is time management. And if there's any perik in the entire Tanakh that talks about time management, it's Perik Gimel and Kehelas. Many of us know that it starts Lakol Zman ve'eis l'chol chayfetz tachas hashamayim. There's a time and a place for everything under the sun. And then in Pasuk Dalet, in that capital, it tells us eis safoid ve'eis rekoid. There's a time to give a hesped, and there's a time to dance. And the Medrash tells us, Eis Safoid, it's a time to give a hesped b'shasa evel, during the year of mourning. Ve'eis Rekoid, and it's a time to dance, achara evel, after the year of mourning. And so this is after the year of Zahava's passing away. So it's a time to talk about Rekoid, about dancing. So let me tell you about Zahava and dancing. Her children often tell that she could be baking challah in the kitchen, and you know, there's a very interesting expression. There's an expression that I once saw. Those who wish to sing always find a song. Zahava always wished to sing, and she always found a song. And she would dance. Her grandchildren would come into the kitchen and she started dancing. Everybody knew how she danced at the chasanas. There's a very interesting Bnei Yisoscha. The Bnei Yisoscha tells us, why do we dance in a circle? Why is that the minig ha'olam? And he says something very interesting. He says, when people dance in a circle, there's nobody in front, there's nobody in back. We're all equal. Nobody feels bigger or more important than anybody else because we're all the same in the same circle. And he says, that's the pshat in the Gemara in Tainus at the end. It says at the end, Osir HaKadosh Baruch Hu lasois mechoel letzadikim. The Eibusher is going to make a big circle for the tzadikim, and Hashem is going to sit in the middle of all of them. So the Bnei Yisoscha says, what does it mean that the tzadikim are going to be in a circle? Some tzadikim are bigger than others. He says, no, but at the end of time, no tzaddik is going to be jealous of anybody else. There's not going to be any jealousy. Everybody's going to look up to everybody else. Everybody's going to be machshiv everybody else. That's what a dance is all about. And that's what Zahava was all about. When she spoke to all of us or to any of us, she could make your heart sing and she could make your heart dance. And that's the Eis Rekoid. None of us will ever forget her, and may she have a lichtika Gan Eden. If you look in Webster's, the meaning of the word manage means to have under control, to direct, to use in a manner desired. Who is the greatest time manager of all? That's the Rabbeinu Shalom himself. Every night when we daven Ma'ariv, we say, B'chochma Paysach she'orim. The Eibusher with wisdom opens up the gates. Uvesvuna mishana itim, the Eibusher with his understanding alters the periods of time. Umachlif es azmanim. We're talking about itim. We're talking about zmanim. We're talking about time. And as a matter of fact, we continue, we today can figure out in 5 years from now what's going to be on April 22nd. When will the sun rise? When will the sun set? And Hashem is going to do it exactly. We know exactly when sunrise is, when sunset is, and that's exactly when it's going to happen. Hashem makes it happen exactly on time. He's the greatest time manager of all. As a matter of fact, in Ashrei we say something very interesting. The Eivishter gives every Balchai, he gives them their food on time. And the Radak tells us something very interesting. There's some animals that eat grass, there's some animals that eat seeds, and there's some animals that eat other animals. V'yesh oichel chai. And yet, al yedei hishtalshelus hasibos, by the development of circumstances, the Eivishter makes that every animal, the ones who eat seeds, the ones who eat grass, the ones who eat other animals, it all works. It is all working, it's all working together in a great orchestra. Because the Eivishter is the greatest, the Rabbeinu Shalom is the greatest time manager of all. And we see something very interesting. Many of us remember what happened with Noach. Noach was supposed to feed the animals. And the Pasuk tells us at the Vayishor Ach Noach, Noach was left alone. And what has happened? Rashi tells us that he was harmed. He was spitting up blood. He was coughing because he couldn't be like Hashem. He couldn't be the perfect time manager. The lion didn't get the food on time, and he got angry, and he hit Noach, and Noach limped the rest of his life because of it. Because it's not easy to be the perfect time manager. The only one who can manage time perfectly all the time is Hashem himself. Many of us know that the Bnei Yisachar, the children, the Shevet of Yisachar, they were considered the Lomdei Torah, the brightest and the smartest of all of Klal Yisrael. What does it say in Divrei Hayamim Aleph? Perik Yud Beis, Pasuk Lamed Beis, Ubnei Yisachar Yoidei Bina Leitim. The people of Yisachar, they understood what time was all about. That's the greatest compliment to them. Yoidei Bina Leitim. They knew when to give advice in Milchama, what to do, and in general, how to take advantage of times. And that's what we have to learn tonight. Tonight, we are going to become those people of the Shevet Yisachar, to be Yoidei Bina Leitim, to have an understanding of how to deal with time. So I want to tell you a very delightful little story. In Mir Yeshiva today, one of the Rosh Yeshivas there is Rabbi Elia Baruch Finkel. So Rabbi Elia Baruch once told me that many, many years ago, there was an American boy that came to learn in Mir. And he was there for 2 years, and he was going back to America for Shidduchim. So Rabbi Elia said to him, Rabbi Elia Baruch said to him, listen, you're going back to America, maybe you want to get a bracha from the Mashgiach of Ponevezh, such a great tzaddik, Rabbi Chatzkel Levenstein. So he said, okay, I'll go, but I don't speak Yiddish. So if you'll be my interpreter, I'll be happy to go. But I'm not going to go alone. So he said, I'll be happy to go with you. So Rabbi Elia Baruch and this American boy from the Midwest, they go to Bnei Brak, and they come into the house of Rabbi Chatzkel, and Rabbi Elia Baruch says in Yiddish, the Bacha gelernt in Yeshiva in Yerushalayim for 2 Jahr, when I get zurück to America. And I will have my bracha. This boy learned it for 2 years, and he would like to have a bracha. So, Rabbi Chatzkel didn't know this boy doesn't speak Yiddish, but he figured that he understood something. After all, it was in yeshiva for 2 years. So he said, "Nu, mit was gehst du zurück? With what are you going back?" So the boy says, "El Al." Rabbi Chatzkel couldn't believe it. He said, "Nein, was nimmst du mit? What are you taking with?" He says, "Rebbe, 2 suitcases." So of course, before Rabbi Chatzkel got upset, Rabbi Elia Baruch explained that the guy doesn't understand the nuances of the Yiddish language. But then when he told him, of course, that he had learned many Masechtas and he was taking back a tremendous amount of Shasa with him, But when I told over this story, somebody showed me something very interesting. The first Meiri in Brachas, which is, Meiri is one of the Rishonim, one of the greatest commentaries on Shas, and he's giving the Hakdama to Shas. And he says every experience that a person goes through, every time period that a person goes through, he has to learn something from it. A person goes through a Yontif like Pesach, or Shavuos, or Sukkot, or Hanukkah. What did you change? Did you learn something from that time frame? If you didn't, listen how he teaches. A famous pasuk in Kuf Yutes, the pasuk is in Kuf Yutes, and the Ayin Psukim. It tells us like this, Eis Lasais Lashem. Every time period is something that you should learn from to accomplish for Hashem. If not, Hefeiru Torasecha. You have destroyed the Torah. He says, the donkey carries the wheat in the wheat season, and the barley in the barley season, and the oats in the oat season. But a bleib is zelba donkey, a bleib is zelba chamar. So a person can't just go through a yontif without changing, without learning something. Tonight, if all of us here tonight are at this wonderful kinos, we have to walk out changed. Because otherwise, after 120 years, Hashem will say, I gave you the opportunity to come to Neshei Kirs. You heard about time management. How could you not change? Every experience is an Eis Lasais Lashem. There's a beautiful story that I once heard, and there's some people here that went with me to Poland. I told this over in the Beis Medrash, in the Ger Beis Medrash. And we have to remember this story for the rest of our lives. The Sfas Emes died, and he was 58 years old. So at his Levaya, his son, the Imre Emes, said to his brother, Rabbi Tzalel, said to his own brother, he said, at least our father had Arichas Yomim. He said, what are you talking about? Arichas Yomim? He lived, he was only 58. He said, I didn't say that he had Arichas Shonim. I said he had Arichas Yomim. There's a big difference between Arichas Yomim and Arichas Shonim. Arichas Yomim means length of days, making the most out of every day. Arichas Shonim means long years. No one in this universe can guarantee for themselves Arichas Shonim. Nobody knows what tomorrow brings. No one. But every single one of us, if we learn time management, can learn and gain Arichas Yomim. Arichas Yomim means making the most of every single day. And that's what the Sfas Emes accomplished. That's what his son, the Imre Emes, said. Our father had Arichas Yomim. Every day he accomplished. Every day was filled. Every day was valuable. And that's what we have to hope for, and that's what we have to learn tonight. How are we going to be Zoicha to Arichas Yomim? Arichas Shonim is not in our hands. That's totally in the hands of the Rabbeinu Shalom. And you know something? When this same group, and many of us are here tonight together, when we went to Sarah Schneer Seminary, we stood outside, and I told them, do you know what Sarah Schneer used to hang up in all the schools? This pasuk. A pasuk in Tilim Tzadik, pasuk Yud Beis. Limnois yameinu kein hoida. Teach us how to count our days. Make every day count. And she used to say like this, count your days, count your hours. Know that every minute, every second counts. You cannot retain it, you cannot save it. Once it's used, you can only store it away in a treasure chest so that one day you can recount it. Learn and know how to count your days. And then she would leave the school right away and people would say, please stay. And she said, if I miss that train, if I come 1 minute late, I've lost it all. I can't get to the next city. Every minute counts. And we see by the Olympics, right? What's the difference between a gold medal winner and a silver medal winner? You watch it, it's not to be believed. 1/100th of a second. 1/100th of a second. Gold is glory. Silver is second fiddle. It's nothing. All the advertisements on the Wheatie boxes, right? It's only the guys. Gold medal by 1/100th of a second. So you can understand what time is all about. So really, our watches and our clocks are very deceptive. Because if you look at a clock and you watch it, so the seconds rolls into minutes, minutes rolls to hours, hours to days, days to weeks, weeks to months, months to years. It's not like that. We live in compartments. Our watch is not telling us the story. The real story is that we live in segments. Different times of the year, different Yom Tovim, different opportunities, different challenges, different responsibilities. We have different segments. And that's what we have to learn tonight. The Yoidei Bina. How are we going to make the most in every compartment of life that we are in? And you know why it's so difficult? Because your spouse wants attention, your children want attention, your friends want attention, your relatives want attention, your business associates want attention, every organization wants your attention, and you also want attention. We're all entitled to attention. How in the world? Look at this. Your spouse, your children, your friends, your business associates, your relatives, your organizations, and you yourself. How are you going to do it? You know what the first thing is? And that's what Rabbi Goldwasser was saying. Loi olecha hamalocha ligmor. That's the first thing. You're not a failure if you're not a supermom. Everybody has to know that. We walk around with Jewish guilt because you think that the person next door does everything. And you know something? I remember, it just occurred to me. I didn't even have it in my notes. I don't usually ad-lib. But I remember my father, Shalom, once said to me, why can't you be like that boy? So you know what I said to him? You know what his father says to him? Why can't you be like Paysach Krohn? So you think that the other person is a supermom. It's not true. It's just on the outside that what you see is happening. But really, nobody can do it all. Lo yolecha hamalocha ligmor, the Avos Mishnah tells us in Perek Beis Tezayin. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you something very interesting. Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't do it all either. Moshe Rabbeinu, he had all these people that were coming to him, day and night. Day and night. So what does his shver tell him? He says to him, and he said, what are you doing? You're sitting alone, you can't do it all. So Moshe answers, what is shver? They all want to find out about Hashem. I got to help him. So the shver tells him, there's no way you can do it. He says, no, Tibor, you're going to get exhausted. The people are going to get exhausted. Nobody can do it alone. When it comes maybe to daven for them, you're the only one. But to teach them, to asking for them, get Sorei Meya, Sorei Alofim, Sorei Asorais, it's a whole system. So you know what I learned from that? I learned that you have to delegate. In every family, do you know what the word team stands for? Team stands for, listen to this, together everyone accomplishes more. That's what team stands for. Together everyone accomplishes more. And you as the mother or the grandmother in your home have to show the family we are a team. We're all doing it together. We all have responsibility. I have heard, I've never seen it because, thank goodness I haven't seen it because I would probably explode. I have heard that there are parents who come up on visiting day to camps with the nanny and the maids and tell that nanny, spread out the blanket and make us a picnic because my little booby, she can't spread out a blanket. Chas v'shalom, she'll do something like that. Anybody who has these nannies and the maids in the home and your children don't do anything, it's a recipe for disaster. You think those kids can afford it when they're going to get married? She won't know how to do a thing. We're spoiling our kids by not getting them involved. In my home, when the kids were small, on the refrigerator, there were jobs. Visha dish, vasha dish, set the table, clean the table, and sweep the floor. Even boys learned how to sweep the floor. Not the mother can't do everything. We're in this together. She didn't eat all the food, so she doesn't have to clean up all the food. So every boy, every girl, that's delegating. And when you delegate, then the mother is not dropping dead at night. You know why? because she doesn't have to be so exhausted after supper, because it's a team effort. Everybody's involved. In my home, and that's how it should be all over the place. When a kid wakes up, they make the beds. The kids come home, they hang up their coats. No mother should hang up a coat for anybody, including your husband. Let them listen to the tape. When somebody comes home, see, what do we have in the house? We have 2 sets of hangers. The little kids, they have the low hooks. So when they come, they hang up their coats, put away their hats, put away their boots. And what's wrong if you send the kid shopping so the kid will learn a value of $1? Laundry? A mother has to pick up laundry from the floor? Are you kidding? Every child takes their own laundry and puts it in the hamper. Because let me tell you what happens if you don't do this. You see, I see the result of it. How do I see the result of it? Because the day after a bris, I come to visit a house. So sometimes the bris is in the shul, so you don't really get to see the house. I come into a house, a churban, laundry piled to the ceiling. The beds haven't been made. The living room is filthy. So the mother says to me, Rabbi Krohn, I just had a baby. What do you mean just had a baby? You couldn't pile this in 6 months. How does it happen? Because the mother always said, no, you just close the door so nobody will see the difference. That's a chinuch. That's delegating. It's a team effort. Of course, when they're going out for shidduchim, what do they ask? Did his grandmother in Poland or Hungary wear a snood? Did the Zayda sit by the Rebbe for 3 hours? Nobody asks if they're neat. But what happens? 6 months after the guy's married, he can't even get into his house because the laundry's piled to the ceiling. She never learned how to fold laundry. And don't laugh, somebody came to me with that problem. And that was the reason they got divorced. She insisted she's not folding laundry. She never folded laundry in her life. So I want to tell you something very sharp. And I'm going to give you the exact source so all the mothers can tell their boys and girls. Take a look at Lev Elio, Chele Gimel, on page 337 and page 338. He's talking to those boys and girls who come home bein azmanim. Yesh lizkar lazar lahoirim b'sidur abayis. Remember to help your parents. He's fixing up the house. Shelo yigram, you shouldn't cause chas v'shalom that the mother le'imoy loymar aho miyoyim shechoza b'nei ha'yeshiva nasa iseda b'abayis. The day my son came home from Eretz Yisrael or from out of town, the house is a holy wreck. What does that mean? We're all in it together. And listen to this. I don't even have to translate this. V'yesh min ha'bocherim kishaboyim bebein azmanim lebeisam harehem mispatchim ala sapa ketana goylim. Right? There's some boys, when they come home, they spread themselves on couches like the rooster. Right? Oh, and they have all kinds of terutzim. This is on page 276, you can show them. And they don't give cover to the father and the mother. It's a lack of akaras hatoiv. It's a lack of midas. And there'll be lousy husbands and terrible fathers. Don't spoil your kids. Part of time management is that it's a team effort. A house is a team effort. And there's no reason for you to be so exhausted. Of course, you're going to make the suppers, as we're going to talk about, and you're going to do the laundry. But every single child has to help. Motzei Shabbos, the boys, when it's their turn, they also vacuum. And I'll tell you another thing. And I hope the husbands who listen to this tape don't mind. And if they do mind, they won't come to the Sheikhs next year. Husbands have to be involved in the raising of a house and in the raising of a children. Yeah, you can clap. Doing homework, that's part of time management. My mother claims she went through high school 7 times. Now, of course, my father helped us as well. And when I did the homework with my kids, we divided it. I love English, I love writing, so of course, all the English homework I did with the kids. All the math homework, my wife did with the kids. I remember we had a book report. One of the kids had to do a book report on Chicago. I had just come back from Chicago. So I brought back, so I made sure that they wrote in the report about the CRC. CRC is the Chicago Rabbinical Council. In Chicago, some people say it's crook, but of course it's not. It's Chicago Rabbinical Council. And I brought potato chips, little bags of potato chips that had the CRC in it, and my son gave it out to the whole class, including the teacher, and he got an A. I remember growing up, and my best friend's wife is sitting right here, Lucy Lou's wife. So I remember we had a debating team in Tervadas. I remember it was great. It was wonderful. Everybody loved it. You know why? Because two classes would debate against each other. There were only 3 guys debating, and the whole class had nothing to do. Just sit and watch. It was a wasted period. But it was a lot of fun. So I remember my father spending time with me, because I was one of the debaters. They had 3 debaters on each team and then a rebuttalist. I was not good in rebuttal, but I debated. So we had this big, very important topics, I remember in those days. One topic was, should Red China be admitted to the UN? I still remember sitting with my father, working out whether Red China should be admitted to the UN or not. Then here was another one. This was incredible. Is the pen really mightier than the sword? So I remember we spent a lot of time on that. And you know, it occurred to me when I was preparing this talk. Now I became a moil, so I used the sword, and I became a writer, so I used the pen. So I don't know what I would say today. I remember my father Shalom once told us, he said that it was before Hanukkah, and it was in Williamsburg, and he went into one of the toy shops, and he wanted to buy us all gifts, and he just said it out loud to himself. He said, I don't know what to get all the kids. So the guy behind the counter, the Chassidish guy, said, you know what you should give your kids? And my father was waiting for the latest gift. He said, time. Time is the most important thing. And that's part of time management. When the husbands are there and the wives are there giving time to the kids. I remember I went with my children. We went to Rav Volba, Zecher Tzadik Levrocha, the Mashgiach. And I said to Rav Volba, I said, you know, many times I have an opportunity to speak about chinuch. What should I tell parents? And he said something phenomenal. He said, tell parents there are 2 things they have to give their children: love and time. So my son was there. So he said, Rebbe, how much time? You know what he answered? As much as they need. That's time management. Time management means getting the whole family involved. The husband is involved, the wives are involved, giving time with the kids, spending homework, that's all part of it. That's all the way of bonding with the kids. You know what my son-in-law does? He goes shopping. Thursday night, that's the night of shopping. Why shouldn't the husband go shopping? And what he does, a beautiful thing. Every Thursday night, a different child goes with him. And then, of course, after they finish shopping, they come visit Zadie and Bubby, and they bring me my Viennese Crunch. They know that. They can't get into Shabbos without that. And it's a great experience. Granted, he also makes cholent. I don't know where he learned how to make cholent. He's one of 7 boys, so his mother had to teach somebody how to cook, so she taught him. Now, I know that which I've just said could be painful because there are many single mothers here. So I want to tell you about single mothers. I think all of us, every single one of us here has an achrayus to help single mothers time management. Because many of them do not have that opportunity to learn with children. How in the world is a single mother supposed to learn Bava Kama with a child? So if your husband or you have a son who knows Bava Kama, what you do is you call that single mother and say, let me help you. I know that you can't learn with your son. It's not expected. Let me learn with them. Let that be your time management helping somebody else. And if there's a single mother who can't get out to grocery shopping, what you do is when you go, you call her up and say, you know, I'm going grocery shopping. Is there anything I can get for you? Because time management is not only your time, but it's Klal Yisrael's time. We're in this together. These are our brothers and sisters who, for whatever reason, are alone. And if you think married couples are struggling with time management, what in the world is a single mother supposed to do first? It's Gehenna on this earth for her. Who thinks about them? But maybe time management, the achrayus of time management, is to make a call and say, you want to come to the grocery? I'm driving, I'll take you. Or else I'll get something for you. Or else my children will learn with your children. And you know what's another beautiful thing of time management? And we used to do this every year. And every one of you who has ever gone on a vacation knows that there are children in your neighborhood who cannot afford to go on vacation. The parents are hardworking people, but they're never going to Orlando. And they're never going to the Homoac. And they're never going down to Florida to visit your mother-in-law. But you call up, and we used to tell every year, every single year. When we went, every year, one kid of our children, you could take one friend. Every year we had one other friend. First of all, what a fabulous chinuch that is for children, that they know that they don't take a vacation without sharing it with somebody else. But those days when the kids are off in school, how could those parents manage? So you take off one of the kids of their hand and you take them. That's a sensitivity. It's a beautiful thing to do. I'd like to talk about something now that we never talk about in public. And that's something which is so important in time management. And that is sleep. How many people here wake up exhausted in the morning? Everybody, right? Nobody here gets enough sleep, right? We feel that way. There's no way. So I want to tell you, when we were in Ger, I told him a word, I'm mamish with sugar from this word. I couldn't get over it when I saw it from the Sfas Emes. And listen to this. The Sfas Emes says, we say in Elu Dvarim every morning, right? We say that these are the things that you get rewards for this world and in the next world. What is one of them? Hashkomas beis hamedrish shachris v'yarvis. Getting up early to the beis medrash, shachris and arvis. Morning and night. So the Sfas Emes says, I understand, you get up early in the morning. So Ashkama's based on Medrash. What do you mean you get up at Arvis? He says, no, listen to what he says. He says, you know what it means? If you go to sleep on time, then you're going to be able to get up early. Hashkoma's based on Medrash doesn't only start with Shachris, it starts with Arvis. You want to be a productive person, you've got to get enough sleep. And if you can't get enough sleep at night, then you've got to take a nap during the day. Without it, we cannot be productive people. And you know how people are when they're tired. They're moody, they're in a lousy mood, they'll say something that they don't want to say and they regret saying. I'll tell you the truth. I've often wondered why Hashem makes us sleep. To me, it would seem, until I came up with an answer, is the biggest waste of time. Now, just think of this for a second. Imagine somebody that sleeps 5 hours a night. I'm lucky if I get that. 5, okay. 5 hours a night. So if you sleep 5 hours a night, that means in 7 days of the week you sleep for 35 hours a week. 35 hours times 52 weeks in a year, that's 1,820 hours a year. You know how many days? That's 75 days. Could you imagine we're sleeping 75 days a year? And then I was figuring out the math. If you take, let's say 50 years, right, from the age 20 to 70, you end up sleeping 3,750 days. Out of 50 years, we're sleeping 10 years. Could you explain to me? Do you know what I could do with 10 more years? You know what I could do with 35 more hours a week? What can we all do? Why did Hashem make us sleep? It always bothered me. So I remember I asked my Rebbe, Rabbi David Krohn, and of course I'll tell you his teretz, and then I'll tell you my teretz. Rabbi David said, you know what? The Gemara says, in Brachas Nun Zayin Amud Beis, there are 5 things that are 1/60th of something else. For example, fire, if you want to know how hot Gehenna is, fire is 1/60th of how hot Gehenna is. You want to know how sweet the mun was? Honey is 1/60th the sweetness of what mun is. Mun was. Shabbos, the joy of Shabbos is 1/60th of what Olam Haba is. And here's this. Sleep, if you think you're out of it when you're sleeping, sleep is 1/60th of death. You can imagine how a person is out of it when they're dead. Right? Sleep is 1/60th of death. Said Rab David, a person has to think that he's not going to live forever, right? Nobody lives forever. But if a person didn't go to sleep and didn't sense that feeling of being so out of it, we would never believe it's going to happen to us. It only happens to other people. It doesn't happen to ourselves. Hashem makes us sleep so that a person should know this is part of death. And nobody lives forever, and you better accomplish everything you're meant to accomplish because you're not sticking around here forever. That's what Rab David's teretz is. Let me tell you what my teretz is. And that's what I believe it has to do with time management. I believe if we never went to sleep, we would never get out of a rut. Imagine, you're in a rut. Rabbi Avram Shua said a gewaldige word recently. I never thought of it. He said, you know what the word Aveira comes from? Aveira comes from Ovar, the past. A person is locked into the past. He's in a lousy rut. He's doing things he knows he shouldn't do, but he can't get out of it. How's he going to stop? If you sleep, you wake up, you're a new person. That's the purpose of sleep. That's the purpose of new beginnings. And time management means that tomorrow I start a new day. So whatever I did yesterday, forget about it. I wasted time. Now it's a brand new beginning. I'm not going to waste time anymore. That's why we sleep. Because sleep is an investment in productivity and in being in a good mood. And I'll tell you, there's another reason why we're so tired. This is incredible. You know, I'm involved now in a project. If you remember last year, we showed Meir Brochas. So that was the project for last year. This year, we're involved in a new thing. My son-in-law and I, it's been sponsored and it's being paid for by a guy, Shimshon Halperin, the one who made those Ashiyotza charts. So he wants everyone in Klal Yisrael to realize the greatness of the human body, to see the godless Habayre, the godless of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So we have now, all of you will be able to get it. It's going to come out, Mr. Hashem, after the summer. Just like the Meir Brochas CD was free, it's going to be called Design of Perfect, the miraculous workings of the human body. And we're interviewing from doctors all over the place, and each one, the cardiologist, the dermatologist, everyone is talking how he sees godless Habayre, the greatness of Hashem, through the eyes, through the teeth, through the skin. It's just incredible. So I've learned a lot of things about the body. Like, for example, when you sneeze, you know how fast the air comes out of your mouth? 100 miles an hour. Isn't that important? You know how many times you blink? 25 times a minute, 20,000 times a day. But here's why you're tired. You know what? When you frown, you use 43 muscles in your face. But if you smile, you only use 14. So that's why you're so tired, because most of us are frowning a whole day, and you're using a lot of muscles. But listen to this. This will get you to stop, because 2,000 frowns gets you one wrinkle. Okay? So tonight, take a good look in the mirror, and you'll see how many thousands of frowns. Okay? So part of time management, in all seriousness, is getting enough sleep. Because really, we cannot be productive without it. And spouses should be able to give each other time. During the day, if a mother has a baby and the baby is sleeping, that's the time that you should take a chapa nap. Klal Yisrael is also a team. Together, everyone accomplishes more. And our achrayus and time management, as we said before, is not only about your time, but it's about everybody's time. And you know how you can help other people's time? I'll tell you an interesting thing that happened in our neighborhood. We had a family, the Winders, now they've moved to Bayswater. But the Winders made a simcha in their home. And they got a whole bunch of chairs and a whole bunch of tables. And then afterwards they were thinking, you know, why don't we just open up a gemach? But they didn't have a garage, so they called me up. They called up my wife and myself, and they said, you know, would you mind storing these tables and chairs? And anybody who needs tables and chairs, they don't have to waste time going out to buy them. They'll be right here. Just anybody come to your garage and take it. And that's exactly what we did. And now this gemach, what we do is we don't charge, obviously it's free, but we ask everybody just to give $10 so we can buy more chairs. So not only now do we have a gemach of tables and chairs that helps everybody in the neighborhood. Nobody has to go out and get tables and chairs. It's all right there. We have wheelchairs. We have big institutional pots. I mean, it's unbelievable what's going on. Tables, it's amazing. Tablecloths, it's incredible. So I think that if we begin to think, how can we service other people's time? What do we have extra that we can give to other people? Then you help also other people in time management. And I remember a fellow once showed me an incredible thing. In Beit Shemesh, they have a newsletter. So they have 87 gemachs. 87 gemachs. So everybody's helping each other. Here, let me tell you my few favorite. My first one, of course, is a bris pillow, right? Why should somebody else go and buy a fancy bris pillow? Somebody has a baby, call them up. They'll get you the bris pillow right away. That's wonderful. Another gemach, I didn't understand, they have a mechitza. You're making a party or something, you need an extra mechitza around? They'll get you the mechitza. Here's an incredible one, a Shabbos goy. They have a Shabbos goy that's handy. See? Now, let's say your kid is stuck up on a tree. You're not allowed to climb a tree on Shabbos. You just call this Shabbos guy. He'll run up there. He'll get your kid down. But he's incredible. An Arbus Gemach. You ever hear that? What happens if your wife has a baby Friday afternoon? And you got to make a Shalom Zacha. Where in the world are you going to get an Arbus? So this family, they stack it. Right? Arbus. You just call them up, Erev Shabbos, an hour, their kids, they'll deliver it. And you know what I saw? Somebody else, not somebody else, there's another Gemach, a mousetrap Gemach. Could you imagine? Let's say you got an extra mouse in the house, right? And you got to get rid of it. You call them, they've got these traps. And you know what I noticed? The same people who have the Arbus Gemach have the mousetrap Gemach. You know why? They're storing all that Arbus. What do you think the mice eat? But in all seriousness, if you think about it, don't so many of us have so many tapes? Why shouldn't we open a tape Gemach? Right? You're not listening to all the tapes. So that would be a nice thing on your block to open a tape Gemach. Helps people. A tablecloth Gemach or whatever. Here's another thing that I think and that I want to start. I believe that one of the reasons there's so many problems in Shidduchim is because, in all honesty, we just can't think of so many people at the same time. I'll give you an example. Let's say somebody calls you up. You don't have a very nice girl. Maybe you could find a shidduch. Or maybe you know somebody. Now, the truth is, of course, every one of us knows 20 young men. But you can't think of it on the spot. So I think that if every one of us would have, see this, what I have, I designed this. There's blue cards and pink cards, you see? And you just put them in a recipe box, right? Except don't call it a recipe box, call it a matchbox, right? Everybody should have a matchbox, right? And just get these cards and write down the names of all the young men, you know? All the single men, those who never, for whatever reason, may be single, even if they were married once, and same thing with the women. And now, last night, for example, somebody called me about a girl in Baltimore. You know, I know the girl, it's a wonderful girl. And I was trying to think, who do I know? I went to my cards, hey, wait a second. That's not true. I called up, I read the shidduch, we'll see what happens. Many of you who listen to my tapes know my record is perfect. I've read 1,000 shidduchim, not one worked out. But okay. But at least I tried. But it's one step closer. But the idea is, this is also a way of time management. It's such a waste of time, Nebuch, we know. That they're looking, but like this, if everybody has these cards in their matchbox, that's terrific. It'll work so much quicker. We'll be able to read shidduchim, be able to accomplish a lot for Klal Yisrael. Here's something that I know that Mrs. Leshkowitz does. We've done it now, a family, and I'm telling you, it is a fabulous idea in time management. That's lists and letters. I'll give you an example. Let's say, after a simcha, my wife and I, we made Baruch Hashem a bar mitzvah. We knew we were going to have another bar mitzvah in a few years. We wrote a letter to each other. All the things that went right and all the things that went wrong. And you save so much time and so much aggravation by the next simcha. For example, you forgot to invite somebody. Right? That uncle, he's still angry. Right? And you might forget it 6 years from now, if he's still around. Right? So, therefore, you write it down. Now, what happens, you know, at a bris or something, you forgot to give somebody a kibbutz and he was insulted. You write it down. You found out a new place, you made a chasana, and there was a great place for gowns. In a few years, you're going to make another chasana. You might forget about it. You might not know. Now, here's one thing that we wrote down, the good speakers and the awful speakers. I was on one of those lists. I won't tell you which one. You want to hear something that happened with me? I couldn't get over it. I could not get over it. At every simcha, Baruch Hashem, especially the weddings and the bar mitzvahs, I always wanted to give out a Torah memento. So I have a son-in-law who's a kohen. So I remember, so for his, I wrote up something about Brichas Kohenim, and we gave it out at the chasana. I have a daughter who's named Elisheva, so everybody calls her Sheva. So I wrote something on Sheva Brachas. I wrote something, the chassan wrote something, and we gave it out. So I remember, by my younger son's bar mitzvah, I was trying to think, you know, what's special about him? What can I do, you know, to make his bar mitzvah unique? What Torah memento should I give out? He's obviously not a kohen, and his name is not Elisheva. You know, his name is Eliezer, so like, what? And then I went to the letter that I wrote 6 years ago. I couldn't believe it. I wrote 6 years earlier that when Eliezer has his bar mitzvah, he's a lefty. Write something on lefties. And what a fabulous idea. I hadn't thought about it. 6 years ago I thought about it. And I wrote it in the letter. And I wrote a kuntres called Yad Eliezer. Anybody who wants it, you can call me. It's free. I've given out, without exaggeration, probably 20,000 of them. All over every place I go. I go to a school, and there's so many lefties. How many lefties are there here? Raise your hand. Not your left hand, your right hand. But anyway. But call me up if you got kids that are lefties, but it has to do with lefties and righties. And it was such a delightful thing. I loved working on it. And I'm telling you, it's been reprinted. I reprinted 10 times for sure. After Yontif, listen to what you should write down after Yontif, how you save yourself time next year. After Yontif Pesach, how much matzah did we really use? Right? Isn't that a great idea? We all buy so much because every year we forget. Which wines made your husband drunk? Right? Or had your kids falling asleep, before Avodim Hayinu? So if you write this down, next year you're not going to buy that heavy sweet wine that makes everybody drunk. I mean, I love the sweet wine. But what about those recipes that tasted like cardboard, right? Right? We all have these Pesach recipes that tasted like cardboard. So if you write it down, you're not going to do it next year. You save yourself a lot of time and aggravation. Places to go, Chol HaMoed, sleeping arrangements for kids and grandchildren that came. These are all time management things. It's very important. They have to know where to find the letter. That's very important. Because otherwise, forget it. Now, I'm a big believer in lists and a big believer in letters, as you can see. Now, think of this. Every morning, I make a list of things to do. So I was thinking, for all of you, of course, my wife said a woman should be giving this, not a man, 2 men. I mean, why would they do it? But okay, fine. So I never forget. When I was once talking to a mamash, a very special Rebbetzin, I'm sure she won't want that I should quote her, so I'm not going to tell you her name. We were talking about all the things that women have to do. She said, something? I would also like to have a wife. But anyway, so imagine a woman. I was trying to think what a typical woman might have to do, let's say on a Tuesday morning, right? She gets up. So watch these 12 things, and let's watch. If we take it seriously, you'll see as of tomorrow morning, if you start making lists, you will see how to make a list and how to function with a list. I'm going to give you 12 things that it could be on a typical day a woman would have to do. Obviously, she doesn't have to do this every single day, but let's just figure it out. She has a sheitel appointment at 11 o'clock. She has to make supper. She has to go to the bank by 3 o'clock. She has to write that thank you note to the teacher who did a nice thing for her child. She wants to call a friend because they're organizing a basketball game. She wants to do her Sudoku, right? She has to do laundry. She wants to be able to daven. The kids have to go to the doctor. They need shots. The water in the sink is trickling. It's not looking so good. She has to go to the grocery, and she has an appointment to make an appointment at the dentist. It's all typical things that a woman might have to do. It looks overwhelming, but let me tell you what to do. The first thing is figure out what's urgent, what's important, and what's minor. And if you just do these things, mark each thing, 1, 2, or 3. 1 is the most important. What's urgent? You've got to get that water fixed. That's a priority. If chas v'shalom there's no water in the house, that's awful. You got to make supper. That's important. Your kids have to eat. Your spouse has to eat. You have to eat, right? But that basketball game can wait. And that dentist appointment can surely wait. Right? But if you start marking things, and then when you begin to cross off those things, you feel like you've done something. You look at yourself, obviously the sheitel appointment is 11 o'clock, you got to be there at 11. And I want to tell you something very important. Rabbi Goldwasser touched on it, but I want to stress it, very important. It is so important to come on time to appointments. You know why? I'll give you an example. Let's say a woman has a dentist appointment. My wife just told me this. She always tries to make either the first or the second appointment when she has to go to the dentist. Why? Because then those are not delayed. So recently she had a 9:45 appointment, but she didn't get in until 10 o'clock. Why? Because the 9 o'clock lady came late. That's a tremendous avla. When you are late for an appointment, not only have you messed up your time management, but you have messed up everybody in that day. Everybody is suffering because you could not get out of the house on time. That's a shreklecha aveira in time management. You are causing people aggravation. You might cause, without your knowing it, that a mother could not go to pick up her child from school because she was late 20 minutes because the dentist just couldn't do everything because you walked in late. That's a very big achrayus. It is very important to be on time to doctor's appointments. Of course, doctors make you wait. That's a different discussion. But you, from your point of view, have to be on time to every appointment. And when you write a list, what's so gavaldic about the list is like this: you're not going to forget to do things. It's impossible to remember everything. We're not superhuman. It's impossible. You write down all the things, even the insignificant things. But try to do those things that you mark number one first. Most of us, me included, like to do the little things. We figure we're going to get it out of the way, but you're really delaying doing the important thing. That's a bad lesson in time management. Do those things that are important. Those are the priorities. You want to know another great thing in time management? I want to show you something. You see these things? These are called pocket portfolios or pocket organizers. Many of us are involved in many, many projects. Just to give you an example of what these are all about. I'm going to Switzerland in November. I'm going to Eretz Yisrael next week. I'm doing the Tisha B'Av video this year. I'm raising money for a poor Nebuch kid in Silver Springs. Nebuch is paralyzed and they need an extra room in his house. Shauli. And the summer trip that I'm taking to Frankfurt, Prague, and Vienna. My desk could look like a churban, which it does anyway. But the point is, if you open up these things, they have a pocket. Any paper that has to do with this situation, you put it here. And you put it in a file in the order. B goes first, E is next, then T, then S, and then S again. I don't mean food, obviously. But the idea is, this is a way to be organized. This is a time management. You know what the worst, I'm going to tell you some of the worst things that people do that waste time. One of the worst things that people do, and this, I'm telling you, as much as I say it, I'm only saying it so I should listen to the tape and learn from myself. I remember I once had a problem, so Rabbi Cohen says, "What do you want from me? Listen to your tapes." Put away things where they belong now. Yeah, you could clap. You know what throws me over the edge? When I have a sefer that I cannot find, and I know I used it yesterday, but I was too lazy to put it back on the shelf, so I put it in a special place. Except now I don't know where that special place is. Do you know? This is embarrassing. I'm going to tell it to you anyway, again, because it's just going to bring it into my neshama. You know, I do a lot of traveling by plane, right? So it's great. I love to sleep on the plane. It's gavaldic. As the plane rolls down the runway, that roar, that's like a baby sleeping to me. It's gavaldic. And I wake up in the clouds. It's wonderful. But when you lean back, you know, your yarmulke could fall off. So I have a special cap that I wear on the plane. You know, it's dark. Nobody sees anyway. I put on a cap. I'm not going to wear my hat. It'll get crushed. So I wear like a certain cap. Fine. I came back from Cleveland last week. Had to go by Menachemova. Flew there. Was there a few hours. Flew back. I was exhausted at night. So I tried, I didn't put the cap in the regular place. I put it in a special place. I'll surely remember. Then a few days later, I had to go to Toronto. I could not find that cap to save myself because I put it in a special place. If you just take that extra second and put something away where it belongs, time management. You know what's another thing about time management? We spend so much time in the car, and many times people are so frustrated with the traffic. But if you leave a few minutes early and you take a tape, a good tape, whether it's a music tape or a Torah tape, which we'll talk about in a second, the trip is so incredibly beautiful. And many times people tell me they don't want to get out of the car because they're still listening to that tape. So I want to tell you what I feel are my favorite tapes. I mean, what I have learned from Rabbi Wein, there is no amount that I could thank him every time I speak to him. I mean, he's a very humble person. He doesn't like to hear it. But the history and the divrei Torah of Rabbi Wein, Rabbi Reisman, Rabbi Moshe Weinberger, Rabbi Friend, Rabbi Riedi. And if you want to laugh so hard that you won't be able to drive, get a David Orlovsky tape. If you haven't heard David Orlovsky, you haven't heard anybody. David Orlovsky is out of this world. First of all, he's from Eretz Yisrael. He's originally, as a matter of fact, he's your cousin? He spoke, okay. He's phenomenal. As a matter of fact, I used to listen to his tapes, and I remember the first time I saw him, you know, he has this heavy belly laugh, you know. You gotta laugh when he laughs, and he's always laughing. So I said to him, I said, Rab David, you know, you look exactly like you sound. So he said, I didn't realize I sound so bad. That's his sense of humor. But I want to tell you about another set of tapes. Listen to this. You know, I have been introduced in many, many different ways. But this is one of the most incredible introductions that I ever got. I remember Rabbi Radinsky's shul, they went away to the homework for Shabbos, the whole shul. So one guy got up to introduce me before Shal Shudas. I was one of the speakers in Shal Shudas. So he says like this. He says, you know, I was driving in my car and I parked it in a Manhattan parking lot. But I forgot, I was listening to Rabbi Krohn's tape, and I forgot to shut the tape, you know, when I shut the car. So when the Puerto Rican guy brought me the tape, brought me the car, he said, I don't know who that guy is, but he sure knows what he's talking about. So if you like Puerto Rican parking attendants and you think they're smart, you can listen to my tapes. You know what's another time saver, time management? Never write down a phone message on a little piece of paper. Because you will never, never find it. Maybe by Bir Chametz if you're lucky. Have a message pad. Have a spiral. And if you don't, you're going to regret it. Because 9 times out of 10, you might find that paper. But that number that you need desperately, you'll never find it. Have every telephone. It's amazing to me. I can't, of course, maybe because I'm a moil and people are calling. So, of course, every phone call is so important. So there's always a pencil and a paper by every single telephone in the house. But every phone should have a pad and a pen that's working. That's time management. Excuse me, my pen is not working. So why is it there? It's not a decorative piece. You want to know how to save time? Here's another, this is a great way. I know you're going to think, make your calls between 7:30 and 8 in the morning. Nobody's in the mood to schmooze at that time. Really. You just, okay, maybe the person can't talk altogether. But to me, I love returning calls 7:30 to 8 o'clock because everybody's out of here. So fine. Not how's this, how's the weather, how's your trip, what are you doing, what are you writing? Let's get to the point and out of here. That's time management. 7:30 to 8 o'clock. It's mamish ideal. Here's another thing that I believe is very, very important in time management. And that is, you must learn to say no. Many of us are very, very good people. And we feel that we are bad people if we say no. But my wife always says this, and it's a gewaldige expression. She says, when you say yes to one thing, you're saying no to another. And that's a very important choice that we have to make. You can't be every place. You have to be in control of your life. You cannot have other people control you. Now, of course, most of the time we're going to say yes. But I want to tell you a very interesting thing that Rav Pam writes. And he writes it in his Sefer, Atar LaMelech, on page 125. And he writes, "Hinei mitzvah gedola l'sameach chosan v'kala." It's a very big mitzvah to be mesameach chosan v'kala. Av ra be'enai, it is bad in my eyes. Hamaisa sheraisi, I see many young people. They dance very late at chasanas because they think they're being big tzaddikim, because they're being mahana and mesameach chosan v'kala, but their parents are babysitting. And the parents are going to stay up, and they're older people, and they're not going to sleep until you come home. And he writes, "Va'af im sochri nara," even if you have a young girl that's there, lishmar asatinik, gam kein ein nochain lehisacha yaisim medai mekamatam. It's also not good that she should be up so late. So, you want to be mesameach chosan v'kala? No, I can't stay. I got to get home. And you know what he writes in the same essay? Sometimes a fellow will want to take his friend to the airport, but his wife has got supper on the table. You can't take that guy to the airport. You got to say no, pay for his cab. But you belong home with your wife and children at the supper table. We must learn to say no. If you say no, you're not a bad person. As much as possible, you try to accommodate. But there comes a point when every person has to realize there's a limit. And otherwise, if you don't have that limit, not only will you be frustrated and angry, but you're going to take it out on others in the house. And then at the end, you're going to suffer in the long run. And finally, one more thing. You know, we're charging a whole day. Like wild people, we're doing so many things. But everybody not only has to charge to do all those things, they have to recharge. Every one of us is entitled to do something for yourself every day. That means you take out 15 minutes a day, you do your Sudoku, you do your crossword puzzle, or get together with a group of your friends once a week, and whether you do a dance lesson or a basketball game or whatever women want to do together. You're entitled to that because you're recharging the batteries. And when you recharge your batteries, you'll be a better person. So this is not just you're being selfish. Look at it the other way. You want to be productive. You want to be happy. You want to be in a good mood. Take time for yourself every day. There's some people I see in my neighborhood, 6:30 in the morning, 2 or 3 women are walking together. It's a wonderful thing. Take time out. You're allowed to do exercise. You're allowed to take, and if you don't take the time out, you're going to be angry and frustrated. And you're going to feel that the whole world is taking advantage of you. And that's not true, and that's not healthy. So let's review everything that we said, and we'll end with a great thought and a great story. Let's remember Hashem himself is the ultimate time manager. Hashem himself was the ultimate time manager, day and night, shkia and nets. We can predict it years in advance. It's going to be right on the money every time. Every balchai, every animal gets its food right on time. Noach couldn't do it. That's why the lion hit him. The Meiri in Brachas tells us, Eis lasais, Lashem, Efeiru Torasecha. Every time period, every experience that we have is an ace, is an opportunity. Lasais Lashem, otherwise, Efeiru Torasecha. And in all seriousness, what we said before, when you get home tonight, whether you get the tape from Mrs. Burl or not, you've got to make 1 or 2 write-down lessons that you learned, that you're going to change. Otherwise, it's a wasted evening. Mrs. Leshkowitz and Mrs. Berkowitz, they spend a lot of time choosing the topics every single year. This topic was chosen 10 or 11 months ago because it's such an important topic. And it is an important topic because it enhances our lives. So write down something that you're going to change because of tonight. The Sfas Emes, what did he say? The Sfas Emes, he lived 58 years, Arichas Yomim. Every one of us, if we understand time management, we can manage our days, we can have Arichas Yomim. Arichas Shonim, that's in Hashem's hands. Sarah Schneer told all her Talmidos, Limnois Yameinu Kein Hoida. Limnois Yameinu. Mrs. Grund is here. She's one of the people who put up that beautiful plaque outside the Sarah Schneer Seminary. The whole Klal Yisrael thanks you, making that Mokim, a Mokim Kodesh that so many people can go visit now. Limnois Yameinu Kein Hoida. Count every day. A clock is deceptive. We live in fragments. We live in compartments. We've got to learn to make the most of every compartment. To remember, Lo yalech hamalocha ligmor. That's what it says in Pirkei Avos. We can't do it all. It's impossible. Even Moshe Rabbeinu was told by Yisrael, you're going to get tired. The people are going to get tired. You got to delegate. Let's delegate to our children. Let's remember every family is a team. Together, everyone accomplishes more. What Rabbi Elya Lapian told us, those sharp words. Don't spoil your kids. Make sure when they come home, no matter what age, the boys and the girls, they should get involved. Husbands as well have to get involved. They have to give time to their children. Time could be in homework, that's fine. Time could be in learning. Avodah Torah, you have to give time and love. How much time? As much as they need. And those that are single mothers, let us call them. Let us understand that if we are stressed out because of time management, how much are they never stressed out? And we should try to help them. Take their kids to shul. A single mother, how's she going to get her child to shul on Shabbos morning? Maybe you or your husband or your son walks by the house and takes that little boy to shul. Let's remember to get enough sleep. Sleep is an investment in productivity and in a good mood. If you go to sleep on time, you'll be a better person tomorrow. Why do we have sleep? Rav David said, because it's 1/60th of death. We realize we're all mortal. Nobody's going to be here forever. I believe that the answer is new beginnings. Every morning, a brand new beginning. Person doesn't have to be like that Avera mode, thinking only about the past. I'm in a rut. I can't get out of it. Let's remember, one of the reasons we might be tired is because we're frowning. 43 muscles of frown, only 14 for a smile. And how many get you a wrinkle? 2,000. Let's get involved with gemachs. Look around your house. What do you have that you're not using anymore? That you could open up a gemach and help other people in their time management. Let's every single one of us. Eventually we're going to give out these cards or get them or make them yourself. Pink cards and blue cards. It'll help so much in the shidduchim situation. Time management will make shidduchim that much faster because we'll be able to think of ideas. And we'll call it a matchbox and make so many beautiful matches. Let's remember the letters and the lists. The letters after Yontif. The letters after a Simcha. Make a list and write down what's important and do the important things first. And then you'll feel so much better about yourself. Get these pocket portfolios, these pocket organizers. And any project that you're involved in, keep it separate so that your house doesn't become a bahola. Let's remember during traffic, you're riding, you're going to a doctor's office, you're going to wait a long time. Take a book, take a tape. Use that time. Have a phone message pad at every telephone. Put away things right where they belong right away so you don't search and waste time looking for it. Make calls in the morning. Learn to say no. And don't forget to recharge your batteries. Just want to end with this thought. The Torah tells us, V'Avram Zokein Bo Bayomim. Avram, he was older, Bo Bayomim, he came in his days. V'Hashem Berachas Avram Bakoil. Hashem blessed Avram with everything. So it occurred to me, maybe in a Hasidic Oifen, Avram Bo Bayomim, every day was accounted for. That's why Hashem saw this is a man that every day is accounted for. That's why Hashem Berachas Avram Bakoil. These days in Sfira, when we count our days, as the slogan that we put together many years ago, we not only count our days, we want to make our days count. So I just want to end with this fabulous story. This is a story about the ultimate time manager, about Hashem himself. How, because when you think about it, every Hashgacha Pratis story that you have ever heard, it's all time management. It's all because this person was here just at that time, and the bus came, and he missed the plane. All those Hashgacha Pratis stories, that's all HaKadosh Baruch Hu's time management. So listen to this story that I heard from the person himself. There's a Rav in Eatontown, New Jersey, which is near Deal. A Sephardic Rav, his name is Rav Shmuel Amon. So Rav Shmuel told me that his mother-in-law Nebuch passed away, and every single year before Rosh Hashanah, him and his wife, they go to the kever, to her mother's kever, and they mispala before Rosh Hashanah. So every year they used to go on a Sunday. That's when it was convenient. It happened in Elul of 1999. He happened to be very, very busy, and he knew that the Beis Olam would be very crowded because many people go there on a Sunday. And he was very tight on time, so he decided, you know what, this year we're going to go Tuesday. Fine. So they go Tuesday. He told me he comes to the Beis Olam. You know, usually when he comes to visit his mother-in-law in the Beis Olam, you know, it's so crowded because everybody's there. And now he was just able to drive up, and he drove right up, and it was very quick. And he was standing there saying Tillim with his wife. All of a sudden, he sees in the distance, like they're bringing a coffin, and there's a few people there. And you could see right away that they're not religious people. And they were able to see him in his suit and his black hat. Obviously, he's an Orthodox person, and they call him that he should come over. So he told me that his first reaction was that probably either they don't know how to say Kaddish, or they need a minyan. And sure enough, he went over, and that's exactly what happened. They didn't know how to say Kaddish, and he taught them, he said the words with them, and they were 9, he was the 10th, so he was very happy. They finished saying the Kaddish, and these people start walking away. He says, what do you mean you're walking away? You got to bury this person. Who is this person? I said, it's our father. What do you mean, your father? Who's going to bury him? You have to bury him. I said, no, the workers are here. You know, that's what they're paid for. They'll do that. He said, you can't let Goyim bury your father? And he knew that it says in Halacha that if Goyim are going to bury a mace, a Yiddish mace, that's considered like a mace mitzvah. You have to do everything possible. That shouldn't happen. So he said, listen, you really have to bury your father. That's the true honor. They said, look, Rabbi, you know, that's what the workers are paid for. You know, we did our duty, we said the Kaddish, and we're out of here. Imamish felt terrible. Okay, they left, and he sees the Goyish workers, they're right there. So he goes over to them and says, listen, do you mind? You know, I'll do it myself. Do you mind? And they say, no, if you want to do it, you know, it's hot, but, you know, if you want to do it, you know, we're not busy, so, you know, we don't have to rush, you could do it. So he takes with a shovel, and he takes the earth, and till the whole coffin is covered, and he's exhausted, but he's very elevated. And he starts thinking to himself, who is this man? Who is this man that he was Zoicha to have, Kfuras Yisrael, that a Yid buried him? So he goes to the office. He says, could you please tell me who that person was that was just buried, that he was brought here by the family? So I'll just make up a Sephardic or English name, but this was not his name. Let's say Manny. This was a man by the name of Manny. And he gets the last name, and he goes back home to deal, next to deal in Englishtown. Actually, Eatontown. Fine. He starts making inquiries. And when he makes inquiries, he is about to faint. Listen to this. He came to America in the early 1960s. In the early 1960s, many, many Syrian people came to America. And not every one of them moved to Brooklyn. A whole group of them moved out to Seattle because they figured that maybe they would be able to get jobs out there. So there's a whole group of Sephardic people in the 1960s, 1970s that are living in Seattle. And they send the kids to the Hebrew Day School. Now, most of these kids, the principal over there, Rabbi Shlomo Maimon, he knew these kids are not going to go to a Yiddish high school. So instead of making the elementary school 8 grades, he made it 9th grades. So like this, he would keep them in the yeshiva for another year. And Shmuel was one of the boys in that school. Now, after the 9th grade, where were these kids going to go? So they brought back one boy from Ney Yisrael who had been in Seattle and who loved Ney Yisrael to speak to these kids, to try to convince them to go to Ney Yisrael. And this kid from Ney Yisrael was so extraordinary that 6 out of the 7 9th graders went to Ney Yisrael. Could you imagine the power of that kid? You know who that boy was? Rabbi Yisachar friend. Could you imagine? So even as a high school boy, the koyach that he had to get those 6 kids out of 7, he brought them all to Ney Yisrael. Now, the Syrian boys, when they came to Ney Yisrael, so Rabbi Neuberger, you know, they had to raise, they didn't have money for tuition. You know, they were newcomers. So what he did, he called the Syrian community in Brooklyn to try to raise funds. Do you know who was the head of raising funds for these boys? This guy, Manny. Manny was a wealthy man in those days. He paid for this Shmuel Amon's tuition in Ner Yisrael. And Nebuch, when he became poor, everybody forgot about him. And his children also forgot about him. But Hashem didn't forget. The ultimate time manager knew that when it comes time to bury this man, I'm going to make Shmuel Amon busy on Sunday. So Shmuel Amon came on Tuesday and buried that man that paid for his tuition that he didn't realize until after he buried him. That's time management. May we all be zeicha to Arichas Yomim and Arichas Shonim. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for listening.